Hello. I would like to read out of James chapter 1 and just highlight a couple words that stuck out to me, and I ended up looking into like the Greek and everything and just want to read some of the stuff I found online for that. So this is James 1:9. No, we'll go to 12. James 1:12, sorry. Bless you, Lord. Blessed is a man who perseveres under trial, for once he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life which the Lord has promised to those who love him. Now that word perseverance, so blessed is a man who perseveres under trial. I'm going to pop over there real quick. Persevere means literally remaining under the load, bearing up, enduring. For the believer, this uniquely happens by God's power. Makes me think of, we have this treasure in earthen vessels, that the power would be of God and not of ourselves. Strong's 5278 depicts the voluntary choice to remain under pressure rather than escape it. In Scripture, this endurance is never stoic resignation. It is confident perseverance grounded in the character and promises of God. The character and promises of God. The term gathers ideas of steadfast loyalty, patient waiting, and unwavering courage. It's this persevering of faith. Hebrews anchors all exhortations to the personal example of Jesus, the pattern of Christ. Hebrews 12:2. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame. 12:3. Believers are to consider him who endured such hostility from sinners, lest they grow weary. That's according to Hebrews 12:3. Christ's endurance transforms the virtue from mere moral grit into Christ-centered, and I would add sourced, imitation, empowering believers through his finished work. Now, in this lexicon, it talks about apostolic exhortations, trials and maturity. So James 1:12, we read that. Hebrews 10:32-36 recalls earlier endurance as grounds for present confidence. So I'll say that again. Hebrews 10:32-36 recalls earlier endurance as grounds for present confidence. You know, because when we're young in the Lord, these things shake us immensely, and we wonder if we're ever going to get out, if we're going to make it through. Well, the Lord persuades us, as Paul was persuaded. I am persuaded, because the faithfulness of the Lord continues. And as we see that persuasion starts to form an unshakable kingdom within us. And so when these trials come, there's this perseverance of whether you're abasing or abound. As Paul said, I've learned the secret to be content. One second. Endurance is consistently tied to future rewards, salvation, reigning with Christ, the crown of life, and the blessed outcome of the Lord that the Lord brought about for Job. Thus, perseverance is not optional. It is the Spirit-empowered pathway to promised glory. Now, I'm going to go back to the scripture. And I'm in James 1 still. But I'm going to hop down to verse 19. James 1:19. Know this, my beloved brothers, but everyone must be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. For the anger of man does not achieve the righteousness of God. Therefore, laying aside all filthiness and all that remains of wickedness, in gentleness receive the implanted word, which is able to save your souls. That's interesting. I skipped over, but it stuck out this time. Therefore, laying aside all filthiness and all that remains of wickedness, in gentleness receive the implanted word, which is able to save your souls. There's a gentleness with receiving the implanted words. But become doers of the word, and not merely hearers who delude themselves. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man who looks at his natural face in a mirror. For once he looked at himself and has gone away, he immediately forgot what kind of person he was. But one who looks intently at the perfect law, the law of freedom, and abides by it, not having become a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this man will be blessed in what he does. I'm going to read that again. And the word I'm going to highlight is intently, and then we'll look at that. But the one who looks intently at the perfect law, the law of freedom, and abides by it, not having become a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this man will be blessed in what he does. Intently. Looks intently. So I looked that word up, intently. I was looking intently at
the word intently.
Looking intently. It means to stoop down and look. Very interesting. So I'm like, that doesn't make that much sense to me. To bend beside, to lean over, so as to peer within. Now what's interesting, so on the topical lexicon it says the verb rendered stoop to look evokes the image of bending low in order to gain insight into something otherwise hidden from a casual glance. That's hidden. It's hidden from the casual glance, but the intent look. In Scripture, this action becomes a metaphor for an earnest, humble, and investigative attention to God's works and words. The physical gesture underscores an inner disposition, reverence mixed with expectancy that is essential for receiving revelation. I love that. An inner disposition of reverence mixed with expectancy that is essential for receiving revelation. Luke 24:12 pictures Peter hurrying to the empty tomb. Stooping down, he saw only the linen cloths. This action highlights a moment of dawning comprehension as the apostle moves from bewilderment toward understanding the resurrection. So he was looking into it, and he's putting all these things together. John 25 records the unnamed disciple who stooped in and looked but did not yet enter. This deliberate pause underscores the awe that surrounds the resurrection event. John 20:11 portrays Mary Magdalene who stooped to look into the tomb and remained weeping until the risen Lord revealed himself. The verb here joins persistence with deep personal devotion. James 1:25, which is what we read. But the one who looks intently into the perfect law that gives freedom and continues in it will be blessed. The investigative stance towards Scripture mirrors the disciples' posture at the tomb, suggesting that the same careful attention applied to the resurrection evidence should characterize every believer's engagement with the Word. 1 Peter 1:12 declares that even angels long to look in these things. The angelic desire to peer into the mysteries of redemption sets an exalted example for human inquiry. The act of stooping conveys humility. The act of looking conveys desire for understanding. Together they form a paradigm for discipleship. Revelation is granted to those who approach with lowliness and persistent focus. I want to say that one again. I like that. Revelation is granted to those who approach with lowliness and persistent focus. Well, how do we approach? Who are we approaching? First, you have to believe God exists. And then once you believe he exists, you go to him. Well, why do we go to him? Do we half-heartedly? No, we full expectedly. Why? Because he cleansed us with the blood of Christ. So we don't have an evil conscience, but we can approach the throne of grace boldly. So seeing that promise remains for me to enter into, us to enter into at any given time. He's faithful even when we're faithless. So that means whether I'm faithful or not, his promise remains. And we must be diligent to exercise faith to come into those promises. And we approach him with lowliness and persistent focus. James applies the same posture to Scripture itself, equating a diligent, bowed-hearted study of God's law with the disciples' first glimpse of resurrection life. Peter extends the concept beyond humanity, portraying angels as continual students of the gospel's unfolding grace, affirming that the plan of salvation is inexhaustibly rich. And even thinking about the context of looking intently into the perfect law, the law of freedom, not being just merely a hearer of the word and going about, but no, looking intently and getting a hold of these promises, holding fast to the word of Christ that was given to us and believing into it and holding on to that word as like a zip line into the full purpose of Christ. I'm believing that word into the fullness of Christ. Holding fast his word, allowing that word to dwell richly in me, giving attention, coming to it, engaging with it, allowing it to have that higher influence over my thought process, my perception, and the way that I filter my experience, and saying, when anything comes up against that truth, I cast it down. I take every thought captive unto the obedience of Christ. I cast down every vain imagination. What is a vain imagination? It's anything that tries to set itself against God's truth. Right. It tries to exalt. What does exalt means? It means it's you hold it in high regard, and it's a sure foundation of something you believe. You know, if I believe that my front door is going to open every day for me to go out to go to work, I have it exalted because I have confidence in it. I believe, I put it there, and I operate in that because I know the door is going to open because it's persistently open to me. If that makes sense. Yeah. But this idea of him being faithful and us continuing to behold that transforms us. That transforms us. And his promise remains, and he's an ever-present help in time of need, and just intently looking and holding fast and gripping onto and engaging with this word that Christ is and that he has spoken forth through the Scriptures, and allowing that to be the influence of our being, to be the filter of our experience, to be the ultimate truth that we uphold. And whenever our circumstance or emotion or other opinions or other things come up against that, we say, no, I cast that down. That is a lie. Why? Because it doesn't align with what God said.